My name is Hannah. I was 32 years old when everything I thought I knew about family loyalty shattered in one single moment. It happened on the night of my father's 70th birthday. The dining room was warm with the glow of golden autumn light. The table was set with our mother's old china plates, shining as if they had been waiting years for this night. I had worked for weeks to prepare every detail, determined to give my father a memory of joy after so many years of grief. Then it happened. My brother Derek stood up. He tapped his glass with a spoon, the sound slicing through the laughter like a blade. He smiled, but it was not a kind smile. His voice carried across the room, heavy with something I could not name at first. "Pack your bags, loser." The words landed like a strike to the chest. My breath caught. My hands froze on the cake knife. For a second, I thought I had misheard him. Everyone turned to look at him, then at me. I saw smirks, nods, even polite applause. It felt like the floor beneath my feet had cracked wide open. "This house is going up for sale," Derek declared, his glass raised high. I looked at my father. His brow furrowed, his eyes clouded with confusion. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came. My heart broke in that instant. This was supposed to be his night, a celebration of 70 years of life. Instead, it was an ambush. Inside me, grief and rage collided. All the years I had given, all the sacrifices I had made, suddenly dismissed with a single cruel toast. Everyone else was clapping, smiling, even celebrating. How could they not see this was theft disguised as generosity? I felt the walls of the house pressing in on me. My vision blurred with tears I refused to shed in front of Derek. I stepped away, pushing through the bodies gathered around the table. The air outside was cool, sharp, with the scent of fallen leaves. I pressed my palm against the porch railing, trying to steady the storm inside me. I knew then, this night was not about my father's birthday at all. It was the unveiling of a scheme that had been building for months, maybe years. A scheme to take everything from him and from me. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. My voice when it came was low but firm. "It's happening," I said into the receiver. "Just like we feared. I need you here, now." I ended the call and closed my eyes. In that silence, a truth settled over me like iron. This was no longer only about love for my father. It was about his dignity, his freedom, his very right to choose the life he wanted. If I stayed silent, if I backed down, they would strip it all away. And I would not let that happen. This is where my story begins. A story of betrayal hidden behind family smiles. A story of sacrifice that almost broke me. And a story of how one quick call changed everything. Before I take you deeper into it, I need to know, where are you listening from tonight? Tell me in the comments. And if you believe family stories like this matter, if you believe in standing up for what's right, make sure you stay with me. Because this journey will test every definition of loyalty and love you have ever known. When I tell people I once had a different life, they rarely believe me. But I did. Just 5 years earlier, I lived in Chicago, high above Lake Michigan, with the world laid out beneath me. At 27, I was a marketing manager for a rising tech firm. My days were filled with client meetings in glass towers, lunches at rooftop cafes, and evenings of happy hours with colleagues. I had worked hard for that life, late nights drafting proposals, weekends spent polishing campaigns. And it was paying off. Promotions came quickly, the corner office was not far off. I even had someone waiting for me at home. Ryan. He was a software developer, calm, where I was driven, practical, where I was daring. We dreamed of traveling across Europe, buying a condo downtown, maybe even starting a family one day. By all accounts, my life was on track, each piece in its perfect place. Then came the call. It was Derek's voice on the other end, flat, unconcerned. "Dad's not doing well," he said. "He forgets to eat. Barely leaves the house. The place is a mess. Someone needs to check on him more often." At first I thought he was exaggerating. Derek had always had a way of framing problems to suit his agenda. But when I came home for a visit, I saw the truth. My father, once a man who had built bridges and roads across 3 states, now sat slumped in his chair, struggling to remember if he had eaten breakfast. His grief after Mom's passing had aged him by decades. I remember standing in the living room, the scent of dust and stale air heavy around me, feeling a knot tighten in my chest. Derek had a mansion in the suburbs, a wife and two perfect children. Lauren was in Colorado with 3 kids of her own, both busy, both with excuses. And me, I was the only one without ties, the only one free enough to step in. Just a few months, I told Ryan when I packed my suitcase. I'll help Dad get back on his feet, then I'll come home. He nodded, but there was distance in his eyes. He did not want to move. He did not want to wait. That 3 months became 6, then 12. My father needed more than visits and phone calls. He needed daily care. So I resigned. I gave up the salary, the office, the city view. I gave up Ryan too when he finally admitted he was not willing to build a life outside Chicago. It felt like my world was folding in on itself. One life ended. Another began in the same bedroom I had painted pink as a child. And yet there were moments that made it worthwhile. Like when Dad on his clearer days would squeeze my hand and whisper, "I don't know what I'd do without you." Those words became my anchor even when Derek's scorn followed me like a shadow. "You're hiding from real life by playing nurse," he sneered during one of his rare visits. Lauren echoed him from afar. "Dad wouldn't want you to put your life on hold." Easy words from people who never stayed long enough to see him struggle up the stairs, who never sat awake at 3 a.m. calming his panic after a bad dream. I carried it all, and I told myself it was worth it. Hi. But I need to pause here, because if you are listening now, I want you to think about something. What would you have done? Would you have stayed in Chicago chasing the career and the relationship? Or would you have packed your bags, like I did stepping into a role no one else wanted? Tell me in the comments. And if you believe stories like this matter sacrifices that are invisible but real, then subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because this sacrifice was only the beginning, and the real storm was still ahead. I wish I could tell you that my brother and sister understood the sacrifice I made. That they appreciated the long nights and the mornings when I coaxed Dad out of bed, brewed his coffee, and set his pills in careful order. But the truth, they resented me for it. Derek was 40, a chief financial officer, who loved to talk about his luxury car, his mansion in the suburbs, and his European vacations twice a year. He never missed a chance to remind us of his success. Yet when it came to Dad, his visits were rare, usually twice a year at most. He would breeze in wearing an expensive suit, shake Dad's hand, and then leave again before dinner ended. Lauren was 38, a teacher at a private school in Colorado. She had 3 children and always said her family came first. She would call Dad maybe once a month, ask a few polite questions, and then hang up. Her life was busy, her children demanding. That was her excuse. And me, I became the caretaker by default. The single one. The one without kids. The one who had time to spare. They acted as if my life was worth less because it was tied to Dad's needs. I remember one holiday, Derek leaned back in his chair, sipping wine, and said, "You're wasting your potential, Hannah. You could have been a partner in your firm by now. Instead, you're hiding out here like some glorified babysitter." Lauren nodded from across the table. "It's not healthy to put your life on hold. Dad wouldn't want that." I wanted to shout. I wanted to ask them where they were when Dad forgot how to use the microwave, when he mixed up his medications, when he sat in the dark for hours because he missed Mom so badly. But I didn't, because they would never understand. They criticized from a distance. They questioned every choice I made. Was the doctor right? Was the medication too strong? Was the food I cooked too heavy? They never offered solutions, never volunteered to take Dad for a week or even a weekend. It was easier to point fingers than to step up. Uncle Walter was the only one who defended me. He lived 3 hours away in Cleveland, but he called Dad twice a week and visited when he could. During one heated family discussion, he turned to Derek and Lauren and said, "Your sister has made sacrifices you two were unwilling to make. Instead of judging her, you should be thanking her." His words didn't land well. Derek's face hardened. Lauren's lips pressed into a thin line. That rift only grew wider after that night. Family gatherings turned into cold performances, smiles hiding sharp undercurrents. And then came Patricia, Dad's new wife, with her polite smile and sharp eyes. Around Derek and Lauren, she played the part of the caring nurse, the devoted wife. Around me, her mask slipped. She told me I was interfering, that Dad and she needed privacy, that maybe I should find a place of my own. But I couldn't leave. Not when Dad would squeeze my hand in a moment of clarity and whisper, "I don't know what I'd do without you." So, I want to pause here and ask you something because your perspective matters to me. If you had siblings like Derek and Lauren, successful, comfortable, but unwilling to help, how would you handle it? Would you confront them? Would you walk away? Or would you stay and fight the lonely fight like I did? Share your thoughts below because I know I'm not the only one who's been called selfish for doing the hard work of caring. The truth is, their absence shaped me. It made me harder, more determined. I thought I could endure their criticism, their distance, as long as Dad was safe. But I didn't know yet just how far they were willing to go, or who they would ally with to take everything away from us. When Patricia entered our lives, I wanted to believe she was a blessing. My father met her at a clinic appointment. She was 50, divorced, and childless. She smiled warmly, carried herself with the calm confidence of someone used to handling fragile people. At first, I thought maybe, just maybe, she could give Dad the companionship he had been missing since Mom died. Their relationship moved fast. Within 6 months, they were married. Derek and Lauren celebrated as if it was proof they could now step away from responsibility. "See, Dad's fine. He has Patricia," Derek said smugly, patting my shoulder during one visit. Lauren chimed in from Colorado. "This is healthy for him. You should think about moving back to your life." But I couldn't. I had seen the fragile mornings when Dad sat staring at the wall, forgetting what day it was. I had guided him through nights when his joints ached too badly to climb the stairs. Patricia's presence didn't erase those struggles. It only made me watch more closely. At first, she seemed eager to help. She cooked meals, joined him at appointments, encouraged him to go to the senior center. I wanted to be grateful, yet something in her never felt right. She glanced at family photos with disinterest, like they were clutter instead of memories. She brought up the value of the house in casual conversation far too often. One night while Dad was asleep, she caught me in the kitchen. Her smile faded, her voice sharp. "It must be sad being your age, no career, no husband, living in your father's house. Harold and I would have more privacy if you found a place of your own." The words stung, but I stayed silent for Dad's sake. He needed peace, not another war under his roof. Still, the mask slipped more often. She behaved like a dutiful wife around Derek and Lauren, pouring tea, praising Dad's career, showing concern. But the moment we were alone, her tone cut like glass. She made comments about my temporary arrangement, reminding me I was an intruder in her marriage. I started noticing little things. She lingered near the mail opening envelopes before Dad could. She asked pointed questions about the title of the house. She joked too sweetly about downsizing someday. And Derek, he welcomed her with open arms. Too open. They started having private conversations at the kitchen table when Dad was at therapy. Papers spread out before them, quickly gathered when I entered. When I asked, Patricia said they were reviewing insurance options. But I glimpsed real estate brochures, property valuation sheets. She smiled too tight when I questioned her. It was clear. She wasn't here for Dad. She was here for the house. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, not to let suspicion rule me. But every time she looked at Dad with that calculated patience, I remembered Mom's voice telling me this house was her legacy, meant to shelter the family even after she was gone. And now that legacy was under threat, cloaked in smiles and false care. Have you ever met someone who seemed perfect at first, but later revealed a different face? Did you trust your instincts, or did you ignore them until it was too late? I'd love to hear in the comments, because sometimes the people closest to us hide the sharpest knives behind polite smiles. I kept quiet for Dad's sake, but inside the unease grew louder every day, and I had no idea that Patricia's arrival wasn't random at all. She hadn't just stumbled into our lives, she had been planted there, and Derek had been pulling strings behind the curtain long before the rest of us noticed. The months that followed proved my instincts were right. What began as unease slowly turned into undeniable patterns. Patricia's smiles grew sharper, her conversations with Derek more secretive, and the house that once felt like a refuge began to feel like a stage for some hidden play. It started small. One afternoon, while Dad was at physical therapy, I came home early and walked into the kitchen. There they were, Patricia and Derek papers spread across the table, property valuation forms, real estate brochures. The moment they saw me, Patricia swept everything into a neat pile, her smile tight and rehearsed. "Just talking about health insurance options for your father," she said. Her tone was too smooth, too practiced. But neighbors had their own stories. Mrs. Collins from across the street stopped me one morning and said, "I noticed strangers walking through your yard yesterday taking measurements. Are you remodeling?" My stomach dropped. Patricia later brushed it off, claiming they were her friends, looking for design inspiration for their own house. But how many friends carry tape measures and sketch pads? Then there was the medication. I saw her rifling through Dad's pill bottles when she thought no one was watching, adjusting dosages. When I confronted her, she said she was just organizing, making it easier for him. But Dad grew more drowsy, more confused. His bad days stretched longer. His good days felt like rare miracles. And Derek, he was suddenly more present than he had been in years. Not for Dad, but for Patricia. They had private meetings while Dad napped. Their voices hushed, their laughter low. I caught fragments of conversation power of attorney, split the difference timing. Words that froze me in place. I confided in Uncle Walter. His voice was steady but laced with warning. "Keep your eyes open, Hannah. I don't trust Patricia. And Derek has always loved money too much. Remember what your mother said about that house? It's to stay in the family with the one who cares for your father. That's you. Don't let them rewrite her wishes." Those words echoed through me. They weren't just plotting to sell a building. They were threatening to erase my mother's legacy. The kitchen where she taught me to bake pies. The backyard where Dad built us a treehouse. The living room where birthdays were celebrated. All of it gone, traded for cash. I began to feel trapped in my own home. Every glance from Patricia carried a warning. Every polite comment from Derek dripped with condescension. Yet I stayed silent, waiting, observing, hoping I was wrong. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. And let me pause here. If you've been following along, you already sense how heavy this is becoming. Stories like these are not just about one family, they are about loyalty, betrayal, and the courage to protect what matters. If you believe in protecting those you love, and in fighting for truth, even when it's uncomfortable, then make sure you're subscribed right now. Join this community so you never miss the rest of this journey. Because what I discovered next proved my worst fears true. So, the cracks were spreading, and soon the entire structure of their lies would be exposed. I just didn't realize yet that Patricia's presence in our family wasn't fate. It was a plan. And Derek was the one who had orchestrated it from the very beginning. If there was one person who reminded me I wasn't losing my mind, it was Uncle Walter, Dad's younger brother. He lived 3 hours away in Cleveland, but even from that distance, he was the only one who checked in regularly. He would call Dad twice a week, sometimes more, just to hear his voice and remind him he wasn't alone. And he called me too to make sure I was holding up. Walter had always been different from Derek. Where Derek measured life in dollars and deals, Walter measured it in loyalty and decency. He wasn't wealthy, but he was present. He remembered birthdays. He showed up when it mattered. And when Mom died, he promised her he would always look after Dad no matter what. When I told him about Patricia's behavior, her subtle digs, her sudden interest in Dad's finances, the strangers touring the property, he didn't dismiss me. He didn't say I was being paranoid. Instead, he sighed heavily, as though he had expected this. "You're the one carrying the weight, Hannah," he said. "And they know it. That makes you dangerous to them. Keep your eyes open. And don't forget what your mother told me years ago. This house was meant to stay in the family with the one who cared for your father in his later years." She said that person would earn it through love, not entitlement. Those words sank deep. Mom's voice through Walter felt like a shield. It was Walter who first suggested I think about legal protections. You need paperwork, he said. If Derek and Patricia are plotting, it won't be enough to just argue. You'll need proof. You'll need documents. Don't wait until they spring their plan. He was right. And as much as I hated to imagine my brother scheming against his own father, the evidence kept piling up. Derek's whispered conversations with Patricia, the sudden appearance of real estate brochures, Dad's unusual drowsiness after Patricia brewed his special tea. I told Walter everything. He listened patiently, then said, I still have friends from my real estate law days. Let me make some calls. We'll find a way to protect Harold and to protect you. The thought of Walter working for us while battling his own cancer treatments broke my heart. He had been diagnosed earlier that year, prostate cancer. Chemo had taken his strength but not his spirit. Don't waste your worry on me, he told me firmly. My fight is mine. Your fight is this house, this family, and you're not fighting it alone. That was the first night in months that I slept without fear pressing on my chest. Looking back, I realized how essential his support was. When your own siblings treat you like an obstacle, you start doubting yourself. You wonder if maybe you are overreacting. But Walter anchored me. He made me believe my instincts were worth trusting. And to those listening right now, if you've ever been gaslit by family, told that you're too sensitive or making things up, then you know how important it is to have just one person in your corner. One voice saying, I believe you. That can change everything. For me, that person was Walter. But belief wasn't enough. We needed action. We needed evidence. Because Derek and Patricia weren't just scheming, they were getting bolder. And the cracks in their mask were about to show in ways even I couldn't ignore. The first clue, Dad's medicine bottles. It was a Tuesday morning when I noticed the first undeniable sign. Dad had slept nearly 12 hours, far longer than usual, and when he finally shuffled into the kitchen, his words were slurred. He could barely lift his coffee mug. His eyes were cloudy, his hands trembling as though his body no longer belonged to him. At first I thought it was age. 70 years is not easy on anyone. But something about the suddenness of it gnawed at me. Just 2 days earlier, he had been alert, even playful, teasing me about burning the toast. Now he could hardly remember what day it was. I began paying closer attention. That evening, Patricia prepared a special tea for him, her movements casual, almost too casual, as she stirred the cup. She smiled at me, but her eyes didn't smile. This will help him sleep, she said. I watched as Dad drank, too trusting to question. Hours later, he was groggy, confused, struggling to walk up the stairs. The pattern repeated. Days when Patricia brewed her tea or handled his pills, Dad was foggy, distant. When she left for a weekend visit to her sister, he was sharper, even cheerful. The difference was like night and day. One night I couldn't shake the feeling, so I came downstairs for water. There she was, Patricia in the kitchen, with the pill bottles spread out before her. I watched from the doorway as she transferred tablets from one container to another. When she saw me, she snapped the lid shut and plastered on that tight smile. Just organizing, she said, her tone dripping with false innocence. The next morning I checked Dad's pill organizer. Some of the tablets were unfamiliar. I took one to a pharmacist friend. His face darkened as he held the pill under the light. This isn't on his prescription list, he said. It's a strong sedative. It would make him drowsy, even confused. The truth hit me like ice water down my spine. Patricia wasn't just careless, she was drugging him. I felt sick, but I knew I needed more than suspicion. I needed evidence. So I began keeping a small journal, what Dad ate, when he took his pills, how he behaved afterward. The pattern was clear. On Patricia's watch, his symptoms of dementia worsened. When she was gone, he improved. This was the moment I realized I couldn't fight alone anymore. I shared everything with Walter. His response was firm. You must protect Harold. Document everything. Don't confront her yet. Let her believe you don't know. Because the more she thinks you're blind, the bolder she'll become. And he was right. Within weeks, I caught her showing the house to strangers while Dad and I were out. Neighbors whispered about people taking measurements, snapping photos of the yard. Patricia's explanation was laughable. They're friends interested in remodeling. Friends with real estate flyers. Friends who carry laser measurers. The walls of my childhood home were closing in, suffocating me with the weight of betrayal. And yet I held my silence, building my case brick by brick. But here's where I want to pause and turn to you. If you discovered a family member, or in this case, a stepmother, was deliberately harming your parent, what would you do? Would you confront them immediately? Call the police, or like me, would you wait? Gather evidence and prepare for the inevitable storm. Share your thoughts, because sometimes survival means holding your fire until the right moment. The storm was coming faster than I expected, and as I prepared to face it, I uncovered proof that made my blood run cold. Patricia wasn't a random encounter at a clinic. She had been planted in our lives, part of a scheme Derek had been weaving long before anyone suspected. The discovery came by accident. One quiet evening, Dad handed me his phone, asking for help with an app. He was frustrated, fumbling with the screen. "Can you fix this, Hannah? I can't get it to work." I took the phone, scrolling through settings, when I stumbled upon an old text thread buried in his messages. The contact name made my breath catch. It wasn't anyone Dad knew, it was Patricia. But the messages went back 3 years, long before she had supposedly met him at the clinic. The first one I read was from Derek, found a perfect mark. Widower, valuable property, daughter living with him might be an issue. I'll keep you posted. Patricia's reply sent a chill straight through me. Daughter can be managed. Get me an introduction and I'll handle the rest. My hands shook as I scrolled further. The conversation laid out a blueprint of betrayal. Derek had identified Dad as a target. Patricia had agreed to play her role. Their entire relationship, the smiles, the meals, the promises, was nothing more than an arrangement to gain control of this house. My mother's legacy. I felt the air leave my lungs. The betrayal wasn't just Patricia's, it was Derek's. My own brother had delivered our father into the hands of a manipulator trading family loyalty for profit. I remember sitting there in the dim glow of the lamp, the phone heavy in my palm, fighting the urge to scream. Every memory of Patricia's sly glances, every whispered conversation with Derek, every dismissive laugh when I raised concerns, they all snapped into place like jagged puzzle pieces. I showed the messages to Dad during one of his clearer moments, his face twisted with pain. "Patricia loves me," he whispered as though saying it could make it true. "Derek is my son. They wouldn't do this." His denial cut deeper than anger ever could. He wanted to believe the people closest to him were incapable of such treachery. But I knew. I had proof in my hands. And it was my duty to act. That night I called Walter. My voice was low, almost shaking. I found the evidence. "They've been planning this from the beginning." He didn't sound surprised, just resolute. "Then it's time to build our defense, quietly, methodically. You can't just expose them without protection. They'll twist everything, make you look unstable. We need documents. We need allies." His words steadied me. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving in the shadows, I was preparing for battle. But let me pause here, because this is where I want to ask you something. If you uncovered undeniable proof that your own brother was conspiring against your father, would you confront him right away? Or would you hold back, building your case piece by piece until the truth could no longer be denied? Tell me what you would do in the comments, because when betrayal comes from blood, the answers aren't simple. With Walter's guidance, I began to document everything. We arranged for Dad to undergo a cognitive assessment during one of his lucid days. We consulted a geriatric specialist independent from Patricia's circle. We gathered witness signatures. Quietly, legally, we built a wall of protection. Patricia and Derek thought they were pulling strings in secret, but I was learning their rhythm, anticipating their moves. And the day would come when their entire scheme collapsed under the weight of their own lies. From the moment I read those messages, my path was set. I could no longer hope Patricia would simply fade from our lives or that Derek would grow a conscience. They were working together, and if I didn't act, they would strip my father of his dignity, his home, and his freedom. Walter was the one who laid out the plan. His voice, though tired from cancer treatments, carried a calm authority. "We need legal protections that will hold even if Derek thinks he's already won. That means new documents witnessed, notarized, and ironclad. So we worked in silence. While Patricia believed she had me cornered, I was preparing the walls around Dad tighter than she could ever imagine. Michael, my old college friend turned attorney, became my secret weapon. He specialized in elder care and estate planning. With his help, we drafted a new healthcare proxy naming Walter and me as decision makers. We created a new power of attorney this time, limited, requiring both our signatures. Most importantly, Dad signed a declaration stating his explicit wish to remain in his home with in-home care, never a facility. These papers were signed during one of Dad's clearer days, documented by Dr. Kapor, a geriatric specialist Walter trusted. Patricia was conveniently away at a nursing conference, one I later discovered didn't exist. Everything was witness notarized, sealed. I also installed small cameras in the common areas of the house. Perfectly legal, perfectly placed. The footage captured Patricia tampering with pills, rifling through Dad's personal papers, even slapping his arm in frustration when he questioned where some of his savings had gone. Each video was stored on encrypted drives, safe from her interference. For months I carried the weight of this secret, smiling when I had to, nodding when Derek gloated, pretending not to notice when Patricia whispered to him in the hallway. But inside, I was cataloging every crime, every betrayal, waiting for the moment to strike. And it wasn't just about saving the house anymore. It was about restoring my father's dignity, about honoring my mother's dying wish that the home she inherited remain a sanctuary for her family. The hardest part was holding back, watching Dad decline on the days Patricia controlled his pills, hearing Derek question my choices, mocking me as if I had wasted my life. I wanted to scream the truth in their faces, but Walter's words echoed in me, "Not yet. Timing is everything. Let them reveal themselves. Then we end it on our terms." And this is where I want to speak directly to you, because I know many of you listening have felt that urge to explode, to expose, to fight right away. But sometimes the strongest move is patience, waiting until the trap is set. Tell me, could you wait like I did? Could you hold the evidence in your hands and bide your time, knowing your enemy was still moving under your roof? Comment below, because that choice defined me. And if you stay with me, you'll see how that patience turned into the one weapon Derek and Patricia never saw coming. So, I thought I had more time. I thought we could choose the perfect moment to confront them. But Derek wasn't patient. Patricia wasn't cautious. They decided to make their move on the very night that should have been about celebration, my father's 70th birthday. And what they planned that night nearly destroyed everything until one phone call changed the course of our lives forever. The morning of Dad's 70th birthday felt almost magical. Sunlight streamed through the windows, golden leaves scattered across the lawn. I had been preparing for weeks, rehearsing beef Wellington 3 times until the pastry turned out just right, baking Mom's apple pie from her faded recipe card, stringing blue and white balloons along the banister. I wanted this day to be a gift, not just for Dad, but for Mom's memory. I set the table with her best china arranged photographs into a leather album that traced 70 years of his life and even hunted down a bottle of the champagne served at his wedding. For a man who had given everything to us, it was the least I could do. Guests began to arrive. Neighbors George and Martha, who had known us since childhood, came bearing fresh bread and warm smiles. Their presence felt like a breath of sanity. Then Derek swept in with his wife Stephanie, carrying a flimsy gift bag as though it were an afterthought. Lauren followed her husband Justin in tow, her arms crossed tight as she drifted almost immediately toward Derek. And then Patricia appeared in a deep red dress, glowing with an energy that set my nerves on edge. She had invited her own friends, people Dad barely knew, including a sharply dressed man with a briefcase. She introduced him as Frank, a dear friend from the real estate world. My stomach twisted. Still, I pushed my unease aside. Tonight was about Dad. I presented the photo album after the meal. His eyes lit up as he flipped through the pages, remembering vacations, graduations, even the Yellowstone trip when Lauren had been terrified of bears. For a moment, his joy filled the room. Then Derek stood, He tapped his glass with a spoon. The sound silenced everyone. He raised his voice, dripping with triumph. "I'd like to make a toast," he said, "to Dad, the man who gave us everything. And tonight we give something back, a new beginning." My skin prickled. His words weren't gratitude. They were the prelude to something darker. As many of you know, this house has become too much for Dad to manage. The stairs, the maintenance, the taxes. After careful thought, Patricia and I have decided it's time for a change. Dad has signed over power of attorney to me. We're selling this house. He'll be moving to Oakwood Terraces, a premium senior facility. My fork clattered against my plate. My chest tightened as though the air had been ripped away. Around me, applause rang out. Glasses clinked. Patricia beamed, gripping Dad's arm. Lauren nodded in approval. Frank opened his briefcase, spreading glossy brochures across the table, right next to the birthday cake. Dad looked bewildered. His lips trembled as he whispered, "But what about Lake Tahoe? Amanda promised we'd see the sunrise." Derek laughed. "Dad, you're in no condition for travel. Oakwood has beautiful views, too. This is for your own good." Patricia's voice dripped with false sweetness. "Yes, darling, it's really best. Amanda can visit any time." The betrayal seared through me. They had chosen this night, his birthday, surrounded by friends, to unveil their scheme to cloak theft as generosity. I couldn't breathe. I pushed back my chair, walked out the door, and let the cool night air hit my face. My hand shook as I pulled out my phone. I dialed the number I had prayed I'd never need to call. "Michael," I said, my voice breaking, "it's happening, just like we feared. I need you here now." And here's where I want to pause, because I can't help but wonder, if it had been you, sitting at that table, hearing your own sibling declare your father's home was gone, what would you have done? Would you have fought right there in front of everyone? Or walked away like I did, to summon help? Tell me in the comments, because those choices define us. Inside, the applause was still ringing. The trap had been set. But what Derek and Patricia didn't know was that I had already prepared my own trap, and it was about to spring. I stood on the porch, my phone still warm in my hand after the call to Michael. The laughter and clinking glasses, from inside, sounded muffled, almost sinister, as though I were listening to a celebration of betrayal. My breath came in short bursts, but beneath the panic was a clarity sharper than any I'd ever felt. This was the moment Walter had warned me about. This was the moment we had been preparing for. Michael's voice echoed in my memory. "If they try something, don't argue. Call me. Let the evidence speak." I gripped the railing, grounding myself against the surge of emotions. Months of sacrifice, of sleepless nights, of watching Patricia slip powders into Dad's tea, everything had led here. I wasn't just Dad's daughter anymore. I was his defender, his only line of protection. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway jolted me. Headlights swept across the lawn. Michael stepped out, crisp suit briefcase in hand, his expression calm but fierce. Behind him, another vehicle pulled up. Uncle Walter, thinner from treatments, yet carrying himself with quiet strength, climbed out. Beside him was Dr. Kapor, his medical bag in tow. My army had arrived. Walter placed a hand on my shoulder. His grip was weak but steady. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded, though my throat felt tight. More than ready. Together we walked back into the house. The scene was frozen in a grotesque tableau. Derek papers spread across the table, explaining escrow accounts to Lauren. Patricia hovering over Dad, her hands gripping his shoulders like claws. Frank, the real estate agent, neatly arranging brochures beside half-eaten cake. Derek looked up, irritation flashing across his face. "Amanda," he said with mock patience, "we're in the middle of something important here. Maybe you could fetch some coffee while the adults handle this." I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the fire inside me. "The paperwork stops now. Dad isn't selling this house, and he's not moving anywhere." Derek laughed, dismissive, the sound grating. "Too late, little sister. The power of attorney gives me the right to make these decisions. Everything is already in motion." Michael set his briefcase on the table with a firm click. "Not exactly," he said smoothly. "Because what's happening here isn't just immoral, it's illegal." Gasps rippled around the room. Patricia's smile faltered, though she quickly recovered, turning to Dad with feigned innocence. Darling, tell them how well I've cared for you. Tell them Amanda is just jealous, trying to control everything. Dad looked lost, his confusion painful to watch. His lips moved, but no words came. Michael's voice cut through the tension. We have medical records, video footage, and pharmacy confirmations proving that Mrs. Walker has been administering unprescribed sedatives. These substances created artificial symptoms of dementia, impairing Harold's ability to consent to any legal documents Derek claims he signed. Patricia's face paled. Derek's jaw clenched. Lauren shifted uneasily in her seat. Walter stepped forward, his voice rough but resolute. There's more. Patricia and Derek have known each other for years. They plotted this entire scheme. We have text messages to prove it. I pulled out Dad's phone, scrolling to the damning thread. My voice shook with fury as I read aloud, widower. Valuable property. Daughter can be managed. Lauren gasped, covering her mouth. Oh my God. Derek, tell me this isn't real. Derek's eyes flashed with panic. Those messages could mean anything. She's twisting things. But Dr. Kapor was already stepping forward, speaking directly to Dad. Mr. Walker, I examined you last month. You were lucid competent when given your proper medication. With your permission, I'd like to run a blood test tonight. We'll know within 24 hours if you've been given unprescribed drugs. Dad blinked slowly, nodding. Yes, do it. Patricia's composure cracked. This is unnecessary. I'm his wife. I don't consent. Michael's tone was cool, decisive. Fortunately, your consent isn't required. Harold signed a healthcare proxy naming Amanda and Walter as his decision-makers. Witnessed, notarized, legal. Which means every move you and Derek have made falls apart right here, right now. The room fell silent. The birthday candles still smoked on the cake, forgotten as the weight of truth descended like a hammer. Right. They thought the celebration would be their victory. Instead, it became their undoing. The silence after Michael's declaration was thick enough to choke on. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Derek slammed his fist on the table so hard the glasses rattled. This is absurd, he spat. Dad signed over power of attorney to me 3 weeks ago. That document overrides anything you think you have. Michael didn't flinch. He opened his briefcase, slid out a set of papers, and laid them neatly across the table. Not when the signature was obtained under the influence of unauthorized sedatives, he said calmly. And not when Harold has already revoked all previous powers of attorney in writing witnessed and notarized. Patricia gasped as if insulted, clutching Dad's arm. Harold, darling, don't let them confuse you. They're trying to turn you against me. You know I've cared for you every single day. Dad blinked, his voice small. I don't understand. Patricia, have you been giving me medicine I didn't know about? Her grip on his arm tightened. Of course not. Amanda is twisting everything because she can't stand to see you happy with me. My heart pounded in my chest, but my voice came out steady. Dad, do you remember last month when Patricia was away visiting her sister? How clear you felt. How strong that was because you were taking your actual prescriptions, not sedatives. Walter's voice, though raspy, cut through like steel. They've been playing you, Harold, Derek and Patricia both. This wasn't love. It was a con. Lauren shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Derek? Is any of this true? Did you know about the medication? Derek's face twisted. She's exaggerating. Dad does need more care. We were only trying to protect him, protect his future. Michael's eyes narrowed. By siphoning $40,000 from his accounts into your company, at rates 4 times higher than the industry standard. Lauren's head snapped toward Derek, what her face drained of color. Derek stammered, his confident mask slipping. That was management fees, nothing illegal. Michael slid another document across the table. Tell that to Adult Protective Services, or the district attorney. Patricia suddenly snapped, her voice rising. This is all Amanda's fault. She's jealous. She's been manipulating Harold, keeping him dependent so she can control him. She wants this house for herself. Her words sliced through the room, but I didn't flinch. No, Patricia. I want this house for Dad, because it's his home, because it's Mom's legacy, and because he deserves the dignity of making his own choices. George and Martha, Dad's oldest friends, spoke for the first time. George's voice shook with anger. We've seen Harold decline these past months, but now it's clear why. He was drugged. For money. Dad's hand trembled as he pushed Patricia's away. His voice, fragile but rising, asked the question I'd been waiting for Patricia. Did you do this to me? Her lips parted, but no words came, only a flicker of panic in her eyes. And let me stop here for a moment, because I want you to imagine sitting in that room. Your father's 70th birthday, the table still littered with cake crumbs and champagne glasses, and suddenly every mask begins to fall. What would you do if the truth about betrayal started to unravel right in front of you? Would you push harder, or would you freeze in the shock of it? Share your thoughts in the comments, because this is the very moment where truth and lies collided, and what happened next would change everything. Because Patricia wasn't done, Derek wasn't finished, and the twist that followed would rip away the last illusions anyone in that room still held. It happened faster than I expected. The room was already tense, but Patricia cracked first. Her carefully built mask shattered in one wild outburst. Her face twisted, her voice shrill. "Fine," she screamed. "You want the truth?" "Yes, I married Harold for his money. Yes, I played the dutiful wife. And yes, Derek promised me half once we sold this crumbling house." Gasps erupted. George dropped his glass. Lauren's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. Dad sat frozen, his face pale with shock, as though every ounce of love he had poured into his marriage had turned into poison in a single breath. Patricia wasn't done. She jabbed a finger at me, her voice dripping venom. "Happy now, Amanda? You ruined everything. All those nights I had to cater to an old man pretending I cared worthless, a waste of 2 years of my life." Even Derek flinched at her words. He hissed through clenched teeth, "Patricia, shut up." But it was too late. Her confession filled the room like wildfire. There was no putting it back. Lauren rounded on Derek, her voice trembling. "You told me Dad wanted this. You told me the move to Oakwood was his idea. Were you lying this whole time?" Derek tried to recover his words, stumbling. I only wanted to secure Dad's care. Patricia is exaggerating." Michael's tone cut like a blade. "Exaggerating. You were siphoning money from Harold's accounts. We have records. You conspired with Patricia to forge control over his decisions. That's financial elder abuse. Criminal." Patricia laughed, high-pitched and bitter. "Don't act so righteous, Derek. You're the one who found me. You're the one who set this whole plan in motion. I just played my part." The silence that followed was deafening. Derek's face burned red. He opened his mouth, but no excuses came. Dad's voice, soft but steady, finally broke through. "Get out," he whispered. Then louder, stronger, "Get out of my house." Patricia spun, fury flashing. "You can't throw me out. I'm your wife." Walter stepped forward, his hand shaking but firm. "Actually, Patricia, the prenup you signed makes it very clear you have no claim to this property. And given tonight's admission of fraud, an annulment will be swift." Her mouth fell open, searching for words. Derek backed away, hands raised, as if he could erase the last 5 minutes. "And this right here is where I want to pause and speak to you. Because betrayal often hides behind polished smiles. Sometimes it takes one slip, one confession, for the truth to burst into the open. And when it does, it changes everything. If you're listening now and you've ever stood against family members who betrayed you, you know how much strength it takes. So stay with me, subscribe, and be part of this community where we face these hard truths together. Patricia stomped upstairs, slamming drawers and closet doors, throwing clothes into a suitcase. Her fury echoed through the house. Downstairs, Derek stood alone, his partner gone, his scheme unraveling, and the eyes of everyone he had deceived fixed on him. And in that silence, for the first time, Derek realized the power he thought he held was gone. But the battle wasn't over, because the legal war, the final reckoning, was only just beginning. Patricia's footsteps thundered upstairs as she tore through drawers, dragging her suitcase across the floor. Every slam of a closet door was like a drumbeat of defeat. When she reappeared, her hair disheveled, her face red with rage, she clutched 2 overstuffed suitcases. "I'll send for the rest of my things," she hissed. "My lawyer will be in touch about a divorce settlement." Michael's voice cut calmly through her fury. Any settlement will be shaped by the evidence of fraud and elder abuse. And given tonight's events, I can assure you criminal charges are on the table. Her face went pale. For the first time, Patricia didn't speak. She simply dragged her bags through the doorway, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. A moment later, her car screeched down the street. Just like that, she was gone. The room hung heavy with the silence she left behind. Then Dad spoke, his voice trembling, but clear. "Get out, Derek." Derek's head snapped toward him. "Dad, you can't mean that." "I mean it," Dad said firmly. His hands, weak moments earlier, now gripped the arms of his chair with strength I hadn't seen in months. "I don't want to see you right now. You betrayed me. You betrayed your mother's memory." Derek's face hardened, the charm gone. "Fine," he said coldly, grabbing his jacket. "But this isn't over. That power of attorney is still valid until proven otherwise." Michael stepped forward, his voice crisp. "We've already filed for an emergency protective order. No property transactions, no withdrawals. You'll be served tomorrow morning." Derek's jaw tightened. He shoved past Walter, muttering curses, and stormed out the door. The slam echoed through the house like the closing of a chapter. Lauren remained, tears streaking her cheeks. She turned to Dad, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Derek told me you were declining, that Amanda was overwhelmed, that moving you would be better. I believed him. I should have come to see for myself." Dad reached out, patting her hand. "You were busy with your family, and Derek has always been persuasive, but you're here now. That's what matters." For the first time that night, I saw my sister not as an adversary, but as another victim of Derek's lies. And in that moment, some of the bitterness in my heart softened. Walter, exhausted but resolute, sank into a chair. His voice was low but firm. "Barbara wanted this house to stay in the family, to shelter Harold until his last day. Tonight, we honored her wish." George and Martha nodded, their faces grave but relieved. The truth had been spoken, and for once it had landed where it needed to. But the weight of the evening pressed down, but a strange peace began to settle. Dad looked around the room, at me, at Walter, at Lauren, at the friends who had stood by him. I believe he said softly that there's still a birthday cake waiting to be enjoyed. Martha hurried to the kitchen to fetch it. George poured fresh drinks. And just like that, celebration returned, not for the house, not for the champagne, but for the truth. Dad hugged me tightly, whispering against my shoulder, "Thank you for fighting for me, Hannah, for seeing what I couldn't." Always, I thought, always. And as we cut the cake, I realized something powerful: justice doesn't always roar in courtrooms or police stations. Sometimes it begins in living rooms, at birthday tables, when one voice dares to say enough. The weeks that followed felt like stepping out of a long storm into clear skies. Patricia's absence was like lifting a heavy curtain. Suddenly the house breathed again. Within days of being on his proper prescriptions, Dad's mind began to sharpen. The fog that had haunted him for months lifted. He laughed more. He remembered names. He walked with steadier steps. Doctors confirmed what we already knew. The sedatives Patricia had been sneaking into his system had created the illusion of dementia. Without them, his memory and clarity returned. At 70, he still had the natural limits of age, but the man who had raised me strong and decisive was back. The legal system moved quickly. Patricia accepted a plea deal for elder abuse, sentenced to probation community service, and barred by restraining order from ever coming near us again. The annulment of her marriage to Dad was swift. Fraud leaves little room for loopholes. Derek's fate was more complicated. Investigations revealed he had siphoned tens of thousands under management fees. His career, his reputation, both hung in the balance. But the worst punishment came from Dad himself, the cold silence of a father who could no longer trust his son. Lauren, on the other hand, changed. She visited often, sometimes bringing her children. We rebuilt something fragile but real. She admitted her guilt, her blindness, and little by little we became sisters again, not enemies standing on opposite sides of a scheme. And me, I found a new rhythm. With Dad improving, I hired a part-time caregiver 3 days a week. That gave me room to accept a remote marketing role with a small startup. Not the fast-track corporate life I once had, but enough to keep my skills sharp while being there for Dad. And, surprisingly, it felt right. Walter became more than an uncle. He became the steady presence that glued us back together. His cancer treatments ended successfully, and he moved into a small house just 2 streets away. He was there for dinners, chess matches with Dad, and long talks that stitched our family into something whole again. But the most healing moment came months later. I had promised Dad we'd see Lake Tahoe again, the place where he proposed to Mom. We finally made that trip. Wrapped in blankets on the chilly shore, we watched the sunrise together. Golden light spilled across the water, the same way it had 45 years ago. Dad whispered, "Your mother would be proud of you, Hannah, not just for saving the house, but for how you did it. With strength, with preparation, and with kindness, even when facing cruelty." Those words stayed with me. They reminded me of the lesson I now carry: love requires vigilance. Protecting those we care about isn't always easy. Sometimes it means standing against the very people who should have stood beside you. Sometimes it means being the lone voice that says no. And here's what I want to leave you with: trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Document everything. Build allies before you desperately need them. And remember, sometimes the most loving act is not avoiding conflict, but facing it head-on. Now the house feels alive again. Laughter fills the rooms. Dad sits on the porch swing watching neighbors walk by, clear-eyed and peaceful. And every time I look at him, I know we came close to losing everything. But we didn't. We fought. We won. So, if you followed me to the end of this story, thank you. And let me ask you, have you ever had to stand up against your own family to protect someone you love? What gave you the courage to do it? Share your story. I'd love to hear it. And if this story resonated with you, if it stirred something deep, then make sure you subscribe and stay with me. Because the next story I'll share takes betrayal and redemption to an entirely new level, and you won't want to miss it. When I sit on the porch now, the world feels quieter. The chaos of that night, the shouting, the lies, the betrayal has faded into memory. What remains is the steady rhythm of life moving forward. Dad sits beside me most evenings, wrapped in a blanket, his eyes clear again. We watch children ride bikes down the street, neighbors wave as they walk their dogs. It feels ordinary, almost simple. But after everything we endured, ordinary feels like a gift. Sometimes I walk through the house and touch the walls, the banister, the old photographs. This home nearly slipped from our hands, not because of strangers, but because of family. That is what makes betrayal cut the deepest. Yet every scar on these walls is matched by love. Love strong enough to fight back, strong enough to win. I think often about Mom, about how she wanted this house to remain a place of safety, of continuity. I believe she would be proud not only that we kept it, but that we fought for it with dignity. We didn't let lies write the ending. We wrote it ourselves. And maybe that is the lesson I want to leave you with. Homes are not just wood and brick. They carry the soul of a family, the laughter, the pain, the memories that shape who we are. Protecting that soul takes courage. And when the storm comes, as it always does, we find out what kind of love we are willing to stand for. So tonight, as the porch swing creaks gently and Dad's hand rests in mine, I whisper a quiet promise. Whatever storms come next, we'll face them the same way we faced this one together. Because sometimes family is not defined by blood. It is defined by who stays, who fights, and who loves without condition.